Iran and Lebanese Hezbollah have messaged that the Iran-led axis of resistance is prepared to continue escalating against American forces in eastern Syria. Iran uses the term axis of resistance to refer to the regional state, semi-state, and non-state actors with which Tehran cooperates to pursue its strategic objectives, including the Bashar al-Assad regime, Lebanese Hezbollah, and various Iraqi, Syrian, and other proxy groups. The Iranian Advisory Center in Syria, likely a front for the IRGC Quds Force, issued a statement on March 24 warning the U.S. that the axis of resistance has the upper hand in Syria and can retaliate against any U.S. attacks. Supreme National Security Council (SNSC) spokesperson Keyvan Khosravi echoed these remarks on March 25. Iranian state media and Lebanese Hezbollah-affiliated outlets have similarly emphasized in recent days that the axis of resistance is prepared to attack U.S. forces in eastern Syria if the escalation cycle between them continues. The IRGC and Lebanese Hezbollah are responding to the series of attacks between the U.S. and Iranian-backed forces that erupted in Syria on March 23 to 24 after Iranian-backed militants conducted a kamikaze drone attack on U.S. forces in northeastern Syria, killing one American. The IRGC and Lebanese Hezbollah are signaling their resolve against the U.S. and readiness to absorb the military costs of further escalation in Syria. U.S. and Israeli airstrikes have demonstrably failed to impose a high enough cost to persuade Iranian leaders to stop their efforts to entrench themselves militarily in Syria and push U.S. forces out. The IRGC may calculate that it incurs a relatively low cost given that these airstrikes often destroy facilities that the IRGC can reconstruct and kill non-Iranian fighters whom the IRGC likely views as expendable. The failure of the U.S. to deter Iran from attacking American positions is, in fact, the key reason that the U.S. became entangled in this latest escalation cycle in the first place. CTP previously argued that Iran likely ordered the kamikaze drone attack that killed an American contractor in retaliation for recent Israeli airstrikes on Iranian-backed targets in Syria because Tehran feared Israeli responses more than it feared American reactions. Israel has conducted a series of airstrikes against Iranian-backed forces in Syria in recent weeks in response to an uptick in Iranian military activity in Syria, especially around Aleppo. Iran has worked to exploit the earthquake in northern Syria to strengthen its military position there in recent weeks, as CTP previously reported. The IRGC is likely trying to bring advanced military capabilities and/or forces into Aleppo under the guise of humanitarian aid. It is unclear for what exactly Iran is preparing, but this activity has clearly crossed an Israeli red line. An Iranian-backed group called the Ghaliboun Brigade issued a statement claiming responsibility for the kamikaze drone attack that killed an American contractor. Iranian state media described this militia as an Iraqi group, although other analysts have characterized it as a Syrian Shia militia. The group could alternatively be a front group for the IRGC Quds Force, which frequently claims attacks under false names. Iran and its proxies may be trying to keep the escalation cycle confined to Syria. Iraqi Kataib Hezbollah leader Abu Ali al-Askari issued a statement disclaiming his organization's involvement in the attack and describing the perpetrators as the Syrian Popular Resistance when congratulating them for the attack. Iranian state media furthermore tweeted a map of U.S. military bases in eastern Syria that the axis of resistance could strike. Iranian regime officials remain split over how to enforce the mandatory hijab law in the aftermath of the Mahsa Amini protest movement. Hardline parliamentarian Hossein Jalali presented a new plan to enforce the hijab law on March 27, which, if implemented, would fine unveiled women up to 30 billion rials, approximately $60,000. This extremely high fine would enable Iranian authorities to detain and arrest unveiled women who do not have the financial means to pay it. Jalali emphasized that the new plan is completely smart and there is no physical confrontation. Regime officials use the term smart, Houshmand in Persian, to refer to advanced technologies, such as facial recognizing cameras, that can identify unveiled women without physically confronting them. Jalali previously espoused a smart approach in December 2022, stating that the hijab law is in place, but physical confrontation will not take place, no one will be arrested, a verbal warning will not even be given. Hardline politician and former Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, IRGC, Officer Mohsen Rafai Doust separately stated on March 25 that enforcing mandatory veiling with force will generate a negative reaction. These individuals' calls for enforcing the hijab law without physical confrontation may be a direct response to security leaders' announcements in recent days that they plan to resume enforcing veiling with a confrontational approach, as CTP previously reported. IRGC Operations Deputy Brigadier General Abbas Nilfershan announced plans to establish patrols in Qom province between March 16 and the end of Ramadan to ensure compliance with the regime's morality standards. The social deputy of the IRGC Qom provincial unit, Major Ali Mehdi Babiai, similarly announced a new initiative, the Let's Enjoying Good in Our Neighborhood plan, to enforce the hijab requirement in Qom province on March 18. The confrontational and smart approaches to hijab enforcement are not mutually exclusive. Political actors who support enforcing mandatory veiling with a smart approach may oppose physical confrontation because of the risk that it could trigger demonstrations similar to those during the Mahsa Amini protests. Those who support physical confrontation, including some commanders in the IRGC, Basij, and Law Enforcement Command, LEC, seem contrastingly to view smart measures such as surveillance and facial recognition technology as supplemental tools to enforce hijab compliance. The LEC previously resumed using surveillance cameras to identify unveiled women in cars in January 2023, for example. Regime officials, regardless of whether they espouse a confrontational or smart approach to hijab enforcement, continue to speak about the hijab in a tone-deaf manner. It is noteworthy that the inter-regime debate is about how to enforce mandatory veiling, not about whether the mandatory hijab law should exist. Both those who support a smart approach and those who prefer physical confrontation agree that they will not make socio-cultural concessions to Iranian women and will instead pursue the hard-line stance put forward by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Tehran Interim Friday Prayer leader Ahmad Khatami stated on March 27 that Iranian women should regard the hijab as a blessing. Assembly of Experts member Ayatollah Mohsen Iraqi separately stated on March 26 that unveiling is the equivalent of a spiritual and cultural coronavirus that destroys society. These statements may resonate with women who already fully abide by the hijab law. They will likely further alienate and fuel frustration among Iranians who oppose the regime's hijab policies, however.